My dear students, this will be lecture 2 in the knowledge area 2. For those who were not viewing the first lecture, my name is Hashul Taib Abdallah, coming from the Department of Criminal and Civil and Criminal Law Department, Faculty of Law, Open University of Tanzania. I'm dealing with criminal law and procedure. As you remember, in the knowledge area 1 lecture, we revealed and discussed some important issues on the introductory aspects of criminal law and procedure. Quickly, you will remember that criminal law deals with crime, and being part of the public law, it defines what is crime, what is not crime, and punishments for any criminal act. But 2 of it will be procedure, criminal procedure, how to deal on mitigating those acts. Therefore, today we need to sail in the boat and to see the general principles of criminal responsibility. What to be measured, what to be assessed in order to say a person is criminal or not criminal. In the general principles for criminal responsibility, we look on conduct of a person and what was behind the conduct of that person before committing an act so termed a crime. After looking to the general principle for criminal responsibility, we will look exceptions to the general rule of criminal responsibility. And lastly, we will examine and we will see some defenses for criminal responsibility. You might commit an act which is crime, but you might have some justifications for you committing that crime. That justification might exonerate you completely from criminal responsibility or might reduce the punishment which you was required to be punished. My dear students, the principles of criminal responsibility will link us to know the elements of the crime. And the general principle for criminal responsibility can be termed in Latin that actus non facit reum nisi mensit rea. The act itself cannot be termed a crime unless and until it has been committed by guilty mind. My dear students, from this general principle, we can know and we can deduct 2 basic principles or 2 main elements for the crime. And these elements are mens rea and actus reus. Actus reus. Actus reus is the first element of the crime. Being the first element of the crime, it looks to the physical element of the crime. It looks to the act itself, which termed as crime. And another element, which is mens rea, it looks to the mental element of the offender. Now, the criminal justice, the criminal law requires the act in one way and the mental element of the person committing the act to coincide. It means a person is doing an act which is forbidden by law, having internal element, having intention to commit that act. If you commit an act which is forbidden by law, but you didn't intend to commit that act, in criminal law, that is not an offense. It will have some other justifications. My dear students, the first element of the crime being actus reus means physical element of the offense. It can be viewed from three main areas. 1. Conduct. 2. Circumstances of the conduct to be committed. And 3. Consequences for the conduct. A criminal lawyer, if you are subjected to investigate a crime, you are supposed to make sure that act is there. Is there a conduct? The circumstances of the conduct has been facilitating the conduct. The consequences of the conduct has been appreciated by wrongdoer. Looking to those three stages of the act, you can appreciate and you can say the conduct has been committed and that conduct is forbidden by law. That is the 50% of the offense. You're supposed to go further to see mental element of the wrongdoer when he is committing the offense. The mental element, my dear students, is mens rea. Mens rea, mental element of the wrongdoer at the time is committing the offense. Okay. The offense is murder. Mr. X killed Mr. Y. So, the act of killing is there. Mr. Y has been murdered, has been killed by Mr. X. The question is, what was the state of affairs for Mr. X when he was committing that killing? So, the same killing might be murder, and the same killing might be not murder if the mental element of the person committing killing is not guilty mind. My dear students, take this an example. A pregnant woman to the final stages of the pregnancy, during the delivery stage, happened complications to the extent that either a new baby or herself to die. A doctor, a medical doctor, might decide to kill the fetus from the womb, and that killing of the fetus, either by way of abortion or by whatever standard, cannot be termed as an offense, because the mind of the doctor during the act of killing the fetus was to save the life of the mother. So that cannot be an act to be punishable. Why? Because at the time at the time a doctor committing killing was for the intention to save the life of the man. My dear students, take another example. A driver on the highway is driving a passenger's bus, carrying on it 65 passengers or more, while in the highway and confronted with pedestrian or somebody walking adjacent to the road, and another lorry is coming in opposite direction. In a way of escaping a pedestrian, a driver having assured 100% that will collide with the lorry, and the collision to the lorry might result death of almost all passengers in the bus. A driver might decide to knock a pedestrian in order to save the life of many passengers on his boat. Therefore, the point to note is not the act itself which should be examined by criminal law, but also the mental element of a person committing the act. Sometimes it was necessary to commit wrong in order to save a life. Think so many examples. Think an example in which somebody commits something which is wrong, but necessarily to commit that wrong in order to save either the life or property of another. That mental element can be viewed from three different stages. The first one is intention. The second one is knowledge. And lastly, negligence. Intention, that is the highest degree of mental element to which a person forms his minds knowingly, understanding what he is doing and what are the consequences of his acts. That we say first degree of mental element. The second degree is assessing from the knowledge. A wrongdoer had a knowledge, well understanding of what he is doing. And if he has knowledge, is he appreciated? Is he or she desired to see what will be the results for his doing? And lastly, negligence. In negligence, a person has a duty to know the consequences of what he's doing, and he has a duty to take care. However, is not discharging that duty. And once not discharging that duty, the consequences happens. That is the third stage or third degree for mental element. My dear students, after examining physical element and mental element, now you are in the position to conclude that unless a person commits something which is forbidden by law with guilty mind, is criminal. Shortly to that, the criminality of the person might be questioned. And such challenges lead us to see some exceptions. It's not necessarily to look and to establish the two elements. You might have a single element and a person declared a criminal. Therefore, we have limitations and we have exceptions to general principle of the criminal responsibility. Those are exceptions. 1, strict liability. 2, vicarious liability. 3, collective liability. And 4, corporate liability. Students, take your time to appreciate the distinctions between one another in order to be in the position to say whether X is criminal or not. What is strict liability? In a strict liability, we are only looking to the conduct. A conduct has been committed. Whether you had an intention, whether you had no intention, provided you have committed an offense, you are liable and you are in for it. And most of the time, look to the Road Traffic Act. All traffic offenses, or many traffic offenses, are strictly liability offenses. If a police officer accuses you for crossing in the crossroad or in the red light, you don't have a defense. You don't have a defense that you had no intention to cross on the red light. You are caught crossing on the red light, whether you had an intention to cross in the red light or not. It is a strictly offense. Therefore, we will not look as to whether you had guilty mind or not. There are other strict offenses in immigration laws. For instance, you are in Tanzania and you are caught in Tanzania without having valid passport, you don't have resident permit, you don't have any authoritative document which allowing you to be in Tanzania. Then you can't plead a defense that you had no intention to be in Tanzania without those documents. It is a strictly offense. In a strictly offenses, we are not looking to the mental element of the person. Rather, we are only looking to the conduct and the act which has been committed by a person. Vicarious liability. In a vicarious liability, two people are held liable for the offense committed by one. Look, one is employer and another one is employee. And the good example is driver and a car owner. A driver is called and charged for driving a defective motor vehicle. The offense is you are driving a defective motor vehicle. And a driver pleaded defense that a car owner allowed me to drive this without repairing it. So a car owner in some circumstances might also be liable vicariously for the offense committed by a driver. Look for the insurance. A driver drives a car having not insured. So a car owner might also be liable for that offense which has been completed, which has been committed by a driver. In a vicarious liability, in order a person to be held liable, it is not necessarily that other person to have committed the offense or not. What is important is to establish the relationship between that person who committed the offense and another person. Do they interrelate? Do they in relation to each other? Like agencies relationship, like employer-employee relationship, and that time. Collective liability. In the collective liability offenses, we are not also examining the motives of each and every one. We are only looking to what has been committed by those people. Think on gang rapes or gang robbery. 10 people organized themselves and went to certain house and robbed or raped certain girl or certain woman. Even though those actually committed the offense are 2 or 3, others will also be liable for joining hands and celebrating while the offense is committed by others. Lastly is corporate liability. In the corporate law, in the business law, the cardinal principle is once an enterprise registered, then that enterprise is governed by a group of people by name of directors or whatever. Therefore, if the entity committed an offense, who will be liable? Those people, being directors or leaders of the corporate, will be responsible despite the fact that they had a motive, they had no motive or whatever. Think on tax offenses. You have a company and that company has 7 directors and the company is accused for not paying tax as a tax evasion or tax avoidance. Therefore, the list of directors in that company are liable. The first director or the other director can't come say, I didn't do that. No, you are in for it because you are a member of the directorship and the company failed to pay tax. Therefore, you are liable. Dear students, the 2 are criminal elements and elements of criminal act, actus reus and mens rea. However, it is not necessarily all the time to prove those 2 offenses. There are exceptions, and the exceptions are strict liability offenses, vicarious liability offenses, corporate liability offenses, and what we termed collective liability offenses. Dear students, now you are in the position to say whether the offense has been committed or not. However, there is one important item in the criminal law known as defenses. You might commit an offense, but you have a justification. You have a valid defense which might exonerate you from criminal responsibility. The following are some of the defenses which pleaded might exonerate a person from criminal responsibility. 1 is insanity. Insanity means mental element of the accused person during the time of committing the offense. The law requires a person should appreciate what is doing during the committal of the offense. Contrary to that, if a person suffers mental disease, dear students, listen very carefully. If a person suffers mental disease, which as a result of that disease makes a person not to appreciate what he is doing, it means a person not knowing exactly what he is doing, and a person is not appreciating the consequences of what he is doing. Those are three things. One, a person must have mental disease. As a result of that mental disease, makes a person not to appreciate what he is doing. It means the act is doing is not 100% know that I'm doing this. And if he know what he's doing is not knowing what are the consequences of his doing, that is insanity under the law. Meaning that a person doing something with mental effects, mental element disappeared from the act. We have so many examples on insanity, but the leading case is the case of M. Natten. And that M. Natten established what we call M. Natten rule. A person who suffers from mental diseases and made him not to appreciate what he is doing, that person cannot be held responsible for what he has committed. Another defense is intoxication. Intoxication resembles to the insanity. However, intoxication caused by intoxic or alcohol. So by the influence of alcohol resulted a person not appreciating what he was doing. But you have to take it with great care and caution. Intoxication should not be self-induced. You should not go to a pub or to a bar and decided to take an alcohol in order to have what we call a Dutch courage. What's a Dutch courage? That I can't talk to that unless I took some few beers. After having some few beers, then he will understand me. So you go and you take some beers in order to have a courage, in order to be intoxicated, and then to tell him or her anything. Some people, my students, you may laugh after this. Some people can't even talk to ladies unless having some few bottles of beer. That is Dutch courage. Some people decide to take some beers, some alcohol, in order to confront certain person with misunderstandings and whatever. In law, that should not be that way. You should not be self-induced alcoholic situation so as to commit certain offenses. Another defense is defense for person and the property. This is known as a self-defense. You may look to section 18 of the Penal Code. It is great and well elaborated. If you commit something in order to save life of a person or in order to save life of property, that thing, regardless, is wrong. You are not committed an offense. Think you confronted with robbers. They attacked you with the different weapons, and then you took your weapon and attacked them to the extent of killing them. You are not liable. Why? Because you was preventing your personality from them. Think on your property. You see you see somebody going to your car and restricting him from taking your car is refusing. So you're supposed to use a reasonable force. And by doing or by exercising that reasonable force, despite of committing an offense, committing death or whatever, that is defense, that is self-defense, that is valid defense. You are not, and you will not be responsible for that. Another defense which is recognized under our penal statute is mistake of the fact. Mistake of the fact meaning that you acted diligently and reasonably, but under the mistake. If you are at home, in your home, and you heard some noises, you thought the noises are of dog or of pig or whatever, so you decided to kill a pig or a dog, but later on you discovered you have killed a human being. Therefore, you have committed something wrong under the mistake. A famous case here is the case of Sultan Maginga. Sultan Maginga in Rufiji district, he was taking care his paddy farm, and it was a habit for Rufiji people at those time to commit fornication at the paddy farms. So Mr. Sultan, while he was in his farm, he saw shadow of people. Shadow. He saw something like a shadow and something moving. Sultan Maginga raised an alarm. Are you a man or a pig? Because it was in his knowledge pigs are going there to eat the paddy, but at the same time, adult people went in those farms to commit fornication. So, reasonably, he raised an alarm. Are you a man or a pig? He didn't get reply. So, he tried to switch on his torch. Unfortunately, the torch was a dim light. So he failed to see exactly the images of those objects. So he decided to fire them. So he fired them. Unfortunately, he killed a person who was committing a fornication in the paddy farm. Mr. Maginga was charged for murder. During the hearing of the murder case, he raised a defense as it was a mistake of fact. He intended to kill pigs. Unfortunately, he killed a man. The High Court judge agreed with Mr. Sultan and he discharged from murder and sentenced him for manslaughter on the real defense of mistake of fact. Another defense is bona fide claim of right. A person is not criminally liable once he has a bona fide right over a property. For instance, somebody having your money, say 100 shillings, and then is refusing to pay you. So you find 50 shillings somewhere. If you go and collect that 50 shillings, it's not stealing. It is bona fide claim of right. The important thing in the defense of bona fide most of the time should be in the property cases and not in other forms of crimes. My dear students, in brief, in this knowledge area 2, we discussed principles of criminal responsibility, and we saw an offense has to have two elements, actus reus and mens rea. It means physical element and the mental element of the offense. Secondly, we saw the exceptions to the general rule. In some offenses, you are not supposed to go and to look for the mental element, like in strict liability, or in vicarious liability, corporate liability, and collective liability. And lastly, we examined some defenses available, and we discussed insanity, intoxication, we discussed the mistake of fact, and self-defense, and the bona fide claim of right. We left aside other defenses like a provocation and the others. You will read them by yourself. However, if we get time, some other time, we will also provide a clear explanation on those areas. Until next time, this is the end of lecture 2 in Knowledge Area 2. Thank you and stay blessed.